Hey guys, thanks for stopping in. We've taken a little bite out of the lineup here this morning, but let's keep going. We have a 290 that fell out of a tractor bucket. We have a 362 hard to start, a 280, an 036, a 441 Arctic, two MS170s owned by the same man. Neither will start. Let's put those in the bench right now together. See you at the workbench. Hi there. Welcome back to my workbench. My name is Erica, and I'm so happy that you're here today. I have two MS170s on the bench right now, and both of them belong to the same person. And he says neither of them will start. So come along with me, and let's find out why these chainsaws won't start. Well, here we are with two Stihl MS170s. One of them is older than the other. This is the newer of the two. You can see a little bit of a difference in their top cover design in that knob. So both these chainsaws, he can't get either of them started. So we'll look at them one at a time here, but I'll just make one video out of the pair of them. So let's start with the older one. I'll just set the newer one down on the floor here behind me. So we'll do a quick walk around on this thing. It's there's a lot of loose dust on it. That can be a sign of running a dull chain. Or it can be a sign of running a backward chain. That chain's on backwards. That must have been cutting real well. Looking at the plastics, the handles, hardware, looking for anything missing. Okay, well, let's take a look and see if there's fuel in it. Yep, there is something in it. Let's dump it out. Start with a clean cup. I'll just dump this little bit of fuel into this glass jar so that we can look at it better. I see some different things in it. Not much stayed in there. That there is some pretty nasty fuel, and there is a big puddle of water down in the bottom. I think you can see it with the flashlight. You see that yellow band of stuff in the bottom there? That's all water. Water, dirt. It stinks. It's probably old. I don't imagine it would run very well on this. Probably been overheating it with the chain on backwards. Then I can see water in the tank too. So let me just try to suck some of that out of there. Some of you probably wonder why somebody would drop off an MS170 with watery fuel and a chain on backwards. I can't make this up. This is real. And he dropped off two of them, so I can only imagine what we're going to find on the other one. So I've got the little bit of water out of the tank. I guess we can put a little bit of fresh fuel in this. We'll take it outside and try to start it. These MS170s, they weren't an expensive saw to begin with, so you can only do so much to these, and he doesn't want to spend a fortune on this. So we're going to look at the basics. And we'll just go from there. We'll go one thing at a time here. Let's put a little bit of fresh fuel in it. This is my new Red Armor mixed up fuel. Geez, those fuel tanks don't hold very much. I'm not taking it outside with the chain on backwards, so we'll just pull the bar and chain off of it. MS170s have a front tensioner, unless you've upgraded yours to a side tensioner, which we have done a video on how to do that. Just picture this saw trying to work with watery fuel and the chain on backwards. The thing was probably screaming for mercy. You can see the wear on the drum sprocket. Running a chain backwards would not help that at all. That thing's just worn and won't stay on, so we'll just leave it off for now. I don't want to lose it outside. It looks like he uses bar oil, so that's good. Dumped his watery fuel out and put some fresh fuel in there. Let's pop outside with this thing and just see if it'll fire up for us. I'll meet you out there. Well, there you go. A little MS170 that won't start. Let's peel back the layers. A few layers anyways. I don't know how far we'll go here. That feels weird, sticky. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. That's a piece of foam for maybe a homemade air filter. Okay. We've got spark. That's an NGK BPMR 7A. Doesn't look like a terrible plug. Let's go down with the camera. Well, what do you guys think about this MS170? Do you have high hopes for it? What do we have here? 120 pounds of compression. Let's take a peek at the spark arrestor. See if it's still in there, and if it is, see what it looks like. It is in there, and it's actually clean. So the rings are free. There is one big kind of carbon score on the one side. But I don't think there's anything in there that's making this saw not start. 120 pounds of compression should be enough to start. We have spark. The spark arrestor is clean. It's probably a fuel related issue. That fuel we took out of the tank was nasty. Put his plug back in. It is gapped properly. Got to be careful with these small, inexpensive chainsaws, how far you go with them, especially when they've been mistreated like this one. This is an unmaintained chainsaw. Backwards chain, watery fuel, homemade air filter that's not doing anything. It's filthy. The fuel was nasty. It's just obviously not a cared for saw. So, where do we go from here? Okay, guys, I didn't catch it on camera, but I just put a little shot of fuel down the intake. And there it sits out there running. Well, sadly, I didn't catch that on film, but all I did was take my little mustard bottle of mixed fuel and just put a little shot of it down the intake, and this thing fired up. So what's going on here is when I choke this saw, just watch this right here. So when I choke it, it's not traveling all the way. See that? And that's why it won't start for me. This is worn. This thing doesn't feel real good, the compression. He needs a bar and chain. We dumped watery fuel out of the tank. He's running a some sort of homemade air filter. When he bought this saw, he probably paid $179 for it. I'm not even sure he wants to put a bar and chain on it. So I think before I go any further with this, I'm going to move it off my table and I'll talk to him. I don't know how much money you put into an old MS170 that's obviously not been taken care of. Okay, so let's just move this off the table for now, and we'll bring his newer one up and see how it looks. Okay, so here is MS170 number 2. This is a newer one, and he says that this saw will not start. This one has the chain, this one's not on backwards. How old of a saw is this? 2021 is the birth date. So he's probably had it a couple years. The clutch cover is not installed correctly. You can see it sticking out there. Okay, so why won't this thing start? Let's take a look, see if there's fuel in it. Yes, there's lots of fuel in it. So his other saw had water in the fuel. His pressure washer that Tyler's working on has water in the fuel. So I'm going to guess that this one has water in it as well. Let's just dump it out and take a look. Okay, we're going to start with a clean cup. So I don't see any water in that fuel sample. It's kind of a bright blue color. And here's the fuel out of his other 170. So we got different fuel, different color. I don't know if this is really old and it's changed color. This has water in it. This doesn't. They both stink, so I'm not really sure. But since there's no water in it, let's dump his fuel back in it, take it outside, see if it'll start for us. Just take a quick look in the fuel tank. It's pretty clean in there. Fuel line and fuel filter look okay. I caught a little bit of dirt in the cup. Lots of bar oil. I just loosened the bar nuts and I put that clutch cover on properly. So let's take this thing outside with his fuel in it and see if it'll fire up for us. I'll meet you out there. Well, it runs. I think he had it flooded. So in Canada, we have two types of fuel: winter fuel and summer fuel. All of it has ethanol in it, but in our winter fuel, they add butane to it, and that's to make cold starting easier. This fuel doesn't smell good. It's probably old. It could be, who knows, from the fall, from the summer. He probably stores this thing outside, and he probably just couldn't get it started. Maybe he didn't hear the pop and flooded it. I don't know. So I'm going to switch that fuel out for some fresh fuel. But let's take a quick look under the hood and just check that air filter out, spark plug, just a couple basic things. This saw has had lots of dirt ingestion. That's all in the intake. I think you can see in there. All kinds of, that's a mess. That spark plug wasn't very tight. That's an NGK. The piston and cylinder look good. I just checked the gap and it's fine. So I'll just put his plug back in. I set it with the last MS170, and I'll say it again. You gotta be careful what you do to these. You can only go so far with them. Like basic maintenance. Beyond that, the cost can just get out of control. On these MS170s, you want to always look at these spark arresters. That was not very tight, so I'm guessing somebody's already been into this one. Actually, it is partially plugged up. So I'll go give that a cleaning. I just take a blowtorch to them, get them hot, and then just wire brush it off. I'll be right back. All right, we got that spark arrestor cleaned up. I gave this a bit of a cleanup too. There was quite a buildup on it. So we'll just put it back together. Okay, spark arrestor is cleaned out. Let's dump that fuel back out of there. Put some fresh fuel in it. He's getting some fresh Red Armor mix. The compression of this saw is much better than that other one. I'm going to try to show you that outside. I'll take both saws out with me and we'll fire this one up and I'll do a little compression demonstration for you. I'll see you outside. Okay, so his saw runs again. I'm going to pick this saw up by its starter handle. You see how I can pick it up? This old saw think she's seen better days. Okay, so we got an older MS170 that looks and feels to be worn out. Bar and chain are worn out. It had a backwards chain on it, a homemade air filter, water in the fuel. Some of the choke mechanism is worn out, so when you choke it, it doesn't actually choke. Should you spend money on this saw? I don't really. If this was my old saw, I don't know how much money I would spend on it. Is it worth putting a new bar and chain on? I'm going to have to leave it up to him. So I won't do anything else with this unless he wants us to, but I can't imagine that he will. And his newer MS170 starts and runs good. I think his fuel was a big factor. Spark arrestor was partially blocked. The saws had lots of dirt ingestion, but when you use these and don't really take care of them, this is what happens. How old of a saw is this? This is a 2011. 05, 2011. The saw probably doesn't owe him anything. It's probably got lots of use out of it. You see when I pick it up by the handle out there? Like, it just doesn't feel good. We found water in the fuel. You know, how far into the fuel system do you go? On a saw you paid $179 for? Probably not very far. So he's got one good working saw, one maybe part saw unless he wants to fix it. We'll see. Well, here we are with a couple Stihl MS170s. These both belong to the same customer, and he said that he couldn't get either of them started. So this one is older than this one. This is a 2011, and this is a 2021. So the older one, we found watery, dirty fuel. We found a homemade air filter that wasn't really doing anything useful. We found a chain on backwards. Needs a new chain. Needs a new bar. This is worn out and just fell off. Low compression. And some of the choke mechanism is worn. This saw probably has a lot of use on it. He probably paid about $160 or $170 for this saw brand new back in 2011. It's probably got a lot of work out of it. How much money do you put into a saw like this? I don't know. If it was my saw, I would probably just put it aside for parts. The newer MS170, he couldn't get it started. We found no water in this fuel, but it does have a very strong smell to it. So I wonder about the age of it. And I explained how here in Canada we have a summer fuel and a winter fuel. It could be left over from last summer or fall. He probably keeps these outside in the cold, and it probably just wouldn't fire for him. I think he had it flooded. The spark arrestor was partially blocked off. This saw has had all kinds of dirt ingestion, but it does run, and the compression feels a lot better than that one does. So he's got one running chainsaw. This one, I can't see that he's going to want to go very far into this, but we'll see what happens. So I guess that's it for now for the two MS170s that won't start. I have a whole line of saws over there waiting for me. It's time for a fresh coffee and on to the next chainsaw. Thank you so much for watching.